adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Shaun Bailey.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Deputy Speaker, a few weeks ago I stood here in this chamber and I stated very clearly that I would not allow the people of West Bromwich West to be abandoned again. And that is why I am here today, to fight for them and to keep our community safe. I'm sure all of us across this House can agree that it's that sense of community, that coming together of people, that genuine care and compassion that we show each other, which makes all of our communities great. But, Mr Speaker, the great communities that make up my constituency in West Bromwich West are under attack. Now, my constituents are decent, hard-working and caring people, and one of the benefits of such a great community is that we're also blessed with some fantastic community groups. In particular, the WMA Community Fitness Centre in Tipton, Mr Deputy Speaker, who work hard to keep young people off the streets and falling into crime through a variety of martial arts, fitness work and pastoral care. But, Mr Speaker, the most recent figures from December 2019 highlight the battle that we are facing in West Bromwich West and West Sandwell more widely. We've seen a sharp rise in antisocial behaviour, burglary, vehicle, violence and sexual crime and drug-related crimes. Also, bike theft and muggings as well. And with just under 100,000 people that live in my constituency, Mr Deputy Speaker, in 2019, these figures were quite frankly shocking. With 2,990 violent and sexual crimes, 1,089 vehicle-related crimes, 1,000 cases of antisocial behaviour, 850 cases of burglary and 790 cases of criminal damage and arson. And since the... Of course I'll give way to the right honourable gentleman.
Thank the member for giving way. And he mentioned burglary, but is he also seeing, as we're seeing in Worley, aggravated burglary, where basically people are smashing into homes even when the residents are there, terrifying and intimidating the residents, and causing huge fear in the neighbourhood?
Absolutely, and I agree with the right honourable gentleman. That is something that I'm also seeing through my casework as well, and I'm sure it's something that he sees probably daily in his mailbox and in his mailbag as well. So I'm seeing that too. Completely agree. Mr Deputy Speaker, since the Labour Police and Crime Commission of the West Midlands took office in August 2014, we have seen a month-on-month increase in violent crime. And this month-on-month increase since 2014 has seen violent crime rise by nearly 175% in the West Midlands area. Now, to give an example of this, Mr Deputy Speaker, in August of 2014, there were 3,148 violent crimes reported in the West Midlands area. In December 2019, this had risen to now over 8,500 incidents of violent crime recorded in that single month. This is an astonishing and shocking figure, and one that cannot be ignored. Now, nobody, and I mean nobody, Mr Deputy Speaker, should feel unsafe in their homes or walking to the shops, or feel concerned for their children walking to school, or have concerns about their car being vandalised at night, or question whether it's safe to leave the window open whilst they sleep. However, this is exactly what I'm hearing on the ground in my constituency, and the statistics very much reflect these concerns. These concerns are a daily occurrence for my constituents who just want to get on and live their lives. As their voice here in Westminster, Mr Deputy Speaker, my constituents are coming to me and pleading with me to do something about these rising levels of crime in West Bromwich West and West Sandwell. Mr Speaker, I've seen firsthand the pain and anguish that these criminals are bringing to an otherwise cohesive, close-knit, welcoming and warm community. But this isn't simply about reducing numbers on a spreadsheet, Mr Deputy Speaker, or grabbing a headline in the paper. The consequences of the current situation are very real and damage the livelihoods of good and honest people. And I want to share in a real-life example that one of my constituents has asked me to share with you today. Now, Ellie lives in Wednesbury, in the north of my constituency. Ellie moved to Wednesbury last year, in May, and she's actually now 9 months pregnant, Mr Deputy Speaker. She was the victim of a burglary at the end of last year, around 7 months after she'd first moved in. The perpetrators broke into her partner's van on the 23rd of December, 2 days before Christmas. They took over £1,000 worth of tools and damaged the van to the point where they had to write it off. Ellie's partner relies on this van for his livelihood. And those tools. This is how he provides for his family, Mr Deputy Speaker. Ellie's also told me that she's experienced 2 other attempted break-ins since she's moved into Wednesbury, just last May. Ellie's life and her partner has had to revolve around them checking the CCTV daily. And I'd ask all members in this House just to think about this for a second. Expecting parents should be thinking about baby names. They should be thinking about decorating the baby's room. They should be deciding on their nappy changing rota and genuinely celebrating the new life that they'll be welcoming into this world. But instead, Ellie and her partner are spending their time checking the CCTV system out of fear that somebody has been trying to break into their vehicle or their home. And I will not allow this to go on, Mr Deputy Speaker. And this is why I am intervening today. Because it's people like Ellie and her soon-to-be-born baby that I was sent here to fight for, and for who too long their voices have not been listened to. As a result of this, tragically, Ellie's told me that she doesn't feel she can stay in Wednesbury once her baby's born, and that her and her partner and their family are going to move away. Now, if we want to revive communities like Wednesbury, like Tipton, like Albury, we need to ensure they're safe for people to live in, so that families can settle themselves there, can feel safe being there, and to want to contribute to our society. Now, I know that this government and my honourable and learned friend are absolutely committed to tackling rising crime, wherever it rears its head. However, we need to remember that what we're talking about today is not solely the responsibility of national government. Shockingly, the response from our local Labour PCC to these very real concerns has been to consider closing a further 3 police stations in West Sandwell, in Albury, which I share with the right honourable gentleman, the member for Worley, Wednesbury, where Ellie lives, and Tipton. And how that conclusion was reached, that was the right decision, I'm not entirely sure. Now, the response I've had when I've had a frank discussion on this is that by closing these buildings, we can offer more officers onto the street, which, on the face of it, sounds a sensible proposition. However, it's certainly not an either-or, considering that the decision has been taken by this Police and Crime Commissioner to invest £33 million in the refurbishment of Lloyd House, the headquarters of West Midlands Police. Now, it is slightly baffling to me, Mr Deputy Speaker, that the refurbishment of an office is a slightly more pressing matter than the safety of residents or boots on the street, Mr Deputy Speaker. This simply isn't good enough for my residents and for my communities. It's an unnecessary waste of vital resources that should be pushed to the front line. Mr Deputy Speaker, I would invite the Police and Crime Commissioner to come to Tipton, where the police station has been threatened for closure, one of the most vulnerable communities in our area, and tell them why their police station should close, but we can refurbish the headquarters. I must make some progress, I'm afraid. Likewise, I would ask him to tell people in Wednesbury who've lost their desk service why an office refurbishment should prioritise that. I have to put on record my thanks to my good friend Jason Sohal, the Conservative candidate for Police and Crime Commissioner of the West Midlands, for his steadfast support and leadership in the campaign to keep Tipton Police Station open, as well as a review of the provision in Wednesbury. Jay has proven that he's a strong friend of the communities in my constituency, and I look forward to working with him as we carry on this fight. Now, I'm of course fully aware that crime is changing, Mr Deputy Speaker, and how we react and deal with crimes. I really do need to make some progress. I really do need to make some progress. I really do need to make some progress, I'm afraid. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, I've been impressed by the efforts of police forces across the country to focus on cybercrime, on recruiting special cyber police officers, and tackling the new ways that crime has developed, even in particular in the West Midlands as well. But I'm sure, Mr Deputy Speaker, that we all agree that what our constituents want to see and want to retain is community-based policing. I thank the right honourable gentleman. It's as if the right honourable gentleman could read my mind, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's community-based policing. That means boots on the ground, just as the right honourable gentleman has said from the century position. That also means buildings, Mr Speaker, and it also means a real estate strategy as well, Mr Deputy Speaker. But it also means fostering community engagement, which is an other core point. Mr Speaker, how we manage the roles of police officers in our communities also needs to change. What police officers are telling me is that they just don't just want to be that last response, that final line of defence, but in fact they want to reclaim that position that they feel they've lost of being at the core and the centre of the community. That means encouraging and allowing police officers to be allowed to get themselves out there, whether that's by sitting in their local cafe, going around their local shop, carrying on as they do, going into our local schools, and yes, Mr Deputy Speaker, simply walking up and down the high street on the beat. But in order to do this, Mr Deputy Speaker, we need to be allowing police officers the freedom to come from behind the desk and to be out there in the community. And I've been encouraged by conversations that I've had recently with people from a range of forces, a range of police and crime commissioners and a range of chief constables, that with the adoption of new technologies, innovative ways of thinking and working, that we can get back to this grassroots policing, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Deputy Speaker, it's also about continuing and building on the amazing network of neighbourhood and street watch schemes, and I want to pay tribute to these groups in my constituency, particularly the Tividale Street Watch Group. I visited them 2 weeks ago and I hope to actually be out on patrol with them soon. These groups are stepping up and doing an amazing job, and by engaging with our award-winning neighbourhood policing teams in West Sandwell, it's fantastic to see the strides that they are making. But we need to ensure that the resource is there, because I'm sure as all members will agree, they cannot be their own private police force. They shouldn't have to be. These people are civilians. They're normal day human beings. Why should they have to be acting like a private police force, Mr Deputy Speaker? So, Mr Deputy Speaker, whilst my contribution today has focused more on the gritty and harsh reality of what my communities face on a day-to-day basis, I am optimistic about the future. I know that we can solve these issues I've highlighted because, quite frankly, Mr Deputy Speaker, we have to. Again, the 20,000 new recruits that we'll soon have across the country are a welcome and a vital addition for our community. The government's wider commitment to protecting our officers on the beat, as he's been so persistent, of course. I'll give way to the right honourable gentleman.
Thank the member for giving way, but isn't it true that we've lost well over 2,000 members and we'll get just over 1,000 back, whereas in fact Surrey are getting an increase on their baseline? Weren't the cuts by the Right Honourable Member for Maidenhead, when she was the Home Secretary, absolutely devastating in the West Midlands?
Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, what I'd say to the Right Honourable Gentleman, and I of course have to have a lot of respect for the Right Honourable Gentleman, but what I would say to him is this: let's look at the reasons why those cuts were made. And it's quite frankly, and it's all summed up by the individual that the Right Honourable Gentleman is backing to be the Mayor of the West Midlands, who left the note to say there's no money left. And I'll assure this House, Mr Deputy Speaker, that we will be working to ensure that he doesn't do to the West Midlands what he did to this country. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, on the point of the 20,000 new recruits, I have three asks to my honourable and learned friend for Life in Horncastle today. And first of all, I want her to reaffirm the government's commitment to ensuring that with these 20,000 extra police officers, the government will use its influence to encourage PCCs to deploy these officers in the areas that need it. And I'm sure we can all agree across this House that we need to be maximising where those police officers are deployed. And whilst that is a decision for our local police forces, hopefully the government can intervene on that. I would also hope that she'll reaffirm the government's commitment to community-based policing, that we work with all of our stakeholders to ensure that police are once again embedded at the heart of our communities. And finally, I hope that my honourable friend will meet with me and other stakeholders in West Sandwell to discuss how we can ensure that police forces have the tools and support they need to operate and keep our communities safe. Mr Deputy Speaker, as I said in my maiden speech, I was brought up to believe that we have a duty to speak out for those who can't speak out for themselves. I wanted to ensure that Ellie, her unborn baby, and the rest of my constituents were heard loud and clear by this government. Our community is vulnerable, and I hope that my constituents will see that I'm keeping my promise to them.
Well,